Hello, welcome everybody. Super excited for our monthly conversation where we ask different why questions. We believe that by asking why questions, we have the chance to dive deeper into our relationship with God. So if you're here, let us know in the chat. Just drop a, hey, I'm here. It's so good to be here with you guys. We are specifically today addressing the question, why should I forgive if they're not sorry? So we're going to dive pretty deep into that. So be prepared to answer, to join along, to participate as we are going. It will be a lot of fun. I promise some entertainment as well. Speaking of, because I'm not as entertaining by myself, I have some friends with me today who are, I would guess, experts in forgiveness. I don't know if that's a thing, but we're going to let them be today. First, I have with me V, and I promised I would not try and say his last name because I shouldn't. So V, tell us, one, your last name and how you're connected to Eastern Hills.
So it's in the English way, it's Greca, but Spanish, it's Huereca. So whatever you want to do there.
That's why I didn't play it. I just let you do it. That's good.
Exactly. But yeah, I do content creation. So I'm part of the creative team at Eastern Hills, which is super fun. And as of right now, obviously Lacuna's not open, but I get to manage that and work with teams on the Lacuna team or, weekend teams and stuff. So
super That's awesome. Fun. You do a great job. Just so you guys know, all those videos you've been enjoying during quarantine are all because V is super talented. So
thank you.
We appreciate him. You have 3 cats. I feel like this is important information to share.
Super important.
Right. Tell us about your cats.
3 cats, Augie, Theodore, and Poppy. So I have, three's a lot, but we became official cat people when we bought a cat tree. So if you're wondering what makes it official.
It's a cat tree.
Yeah,
I like it.
I used to be a dog person, so you can always be changed. So.
That's fair. I'm an animal person, so I'm okay with whatever animals come our way. We have our second expert with us, having mild technical difficulties, but we found a new device, so let's see how this one works. Are we ready? None other than Sonia. Welcome, Sonia. We're so glad you're here.
Hi. I can't see any of you yet, but I can hear you, and I'm trying from my phone, so we'll give that a try.
That's fair. Sonia, tell us, since you can hear me, I'll just make sure I say everything. Tell us a little bit about yourself and how you're connected to Eastern Hills.
Yeah. So I am the office manager here at Eastern Hills, and Eastern Hills has been a big part of my life. From the time that I was actually a little girl. My parents were a part of the group that helped start Eastern Hills in the early 80s. And so I have been going here for a long time and then moved away, got married, and then ended up back here and have been working here for about 16 years. So I love this place. I've got 4 kids and stay busy with that. But yeah, that's a little bit about me.
I love it. For those of you that don't know, Sonia and I are decently connected because we lived in the same place at different times.
It's true.
And we're Dutch or something. I don't know.
Something like that.
Yeah. We have a couple of shout outs. Hey, Libby, good to see you. Hey, Hannah, so glad you're here with us. Aaron, we see you there too. Super excited. Oh, Libby specifically said, hey, V, exclamation point, to infinity. So
that's awesome. Shout out to V.
It's pretty awesome. We lost Sonia again, so if she comes back, she comes back. But we have an opener question for everyone to participate in. The question is, what is your favorite emoji? What is your favorite emoji? I have to admit, I have not seen the Emoji Movie either, so my emoji experience is pretty limited. But V, do you have a favorite emoji?
Yeah, I tried to pull mine up. Let's see if you can see it. Do you know, like the sneaky eyes? I like those. I think those are like super funny to use.
I agree.
But it's hard to pick a favorite emoji. I just realized
that. There's so many to choose from, and then they just keep adding more. So, Sonia, do you have a favorite emoji?
I do. And actually I feel like it's really applicable for the last like 5 to 10 minutes of what's been going on with my phone and my computer. I definitely use the one a lot where, the girl has got her hand on the top of her forehead. Just because it feels like it's the right one to use when you have no other words. It's like I don't know what to do, I don't know what to think, and that's kind of how I feel about my computer and my phone right now. So
Super relevant, right?
yeah, it's good.
That's how we feel about your technology right now too.
I'm sure.
I love it. I really genuinely, I talk text. And so I do the smiley face, and it does the eyes with the nose and a mouth. And so it doesn't turn it into an emoji. So we do have Lisa's favorite. Now, is this like the hug, or is this the like, yay, I love you, this is awesome? Because I'm not sure which one that is, but guys, I don't know these things.
Never known.
Lisa also has the crying, laughing face, which feels fitting. Hannah has, is that the goofy face? Is that what you'd call that? I like it.
Yeah.
Lisa gave me an answer. It's both. That's why I love it. It is both a hug and whatever it needs to be. So
Makes sense.
perfect. I should pick a favorite. Mine is the dancing girl.
There you go. There you go.
It's my favorite.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm not really sure what to do with this Sonia problem. So not that Sonia is a problem. Sonia has never been a problem. She's always been the solution. But we're going to have to pull an audible, I think. So hold on momentarily while I pull an audible. We may pull in a different expert based on the fact that technology is working for said expert. So without further ado, and last minute, we have Lisa.
Here we go. Good thing I took a shower.
And just for kicks and giggles, we're going to add Sonia in, and if she stays, she stays.
But if she wants to, you can.
Oh my goodness.
So weird. And you even are at work, so you've got the good Wi-Fi.
So sorry.
It's all good. Oh, before we move too far into questions, Libby added her emojis to the little hearts and the squinty laughy face. I don't know like if there's formal names for these, but I apologize for not knowing them. But anyway, well, today we're talking all about forgiveness. So we're going to get to share a little bit of experience, but also share some thoughts and processes based on our own work in forgiveness and the biblical work in forgiveness, which turns out is pretty complicated. So question number one, we'll just start with V, if you're okay with that.
Sure.
V, what is forgiveness and why is it so hard?
To me, forgiveness is, I feel like I'd have two answers for that. I feel like one is the forgiveness that I know that I received from Jesus, and it's one that I don't deserve, but I also know that's something, if someone doesn't understand that, I think we can all agree that forgiveness is something where you're willing to give love to someone who you think doesn't deserve it for something they did wrong. And so I feel like that could be something we could all agree on. And then I think it's hard because I think the human condition a little bit sometimes is to play God, and I think it's to have control and to have this is to kind of be in control of judgment and have, like going back to like what people deserve. I think that's like the human condition. You want people to get what they deserve, and so I think sometimes it's hard to kind of deny yourself in that. And so when we try to play God, I think we just become a tyrant, and we kind of lose that grace that should be involved in it. I think mercy and grace is way harder than like a heavy-handed form of judgment. So oftentimes, I guess the hard thing is the right thing to do, but super tough.
For sure. Sonia, since you're here for now, let's give you a chance to answer too.
Yeah, I mean, I think that for me, when I think about forgiveness, I think about that grace being extended to a situation or to a person when it doesn't feel like it's deserved. And I think that's why it makes it so hard, because, in my Enneagram oneness, the right and the wrong and the things like that, you think that there should be this balance of what you deserve and what you get and based upon what you do. And I think that that's exactly what forgiveness is not about. It's definitely about that grace that gets extended to us and that we get to give to other people, even when it doesn't make sense. And it's hard.
Absolutely. Lisa, you want to add some things in there?
Yeah, I just Googled what it was since I wasn't fully prepared. But I actually liked the answer that I got. It said to stop feeling angry or resentful about something. And I think oftentimes I can move beyond something without actually forgiving someone. I can kind of go through the motions of just moving forward, but I am holding on to that anger or that bitterness or that resentment. And so when you're forgiving, you're moving beyond that as well.
That's good. That's good. Just to add some Greek, I'm not going to give you the Greek word because I don't remember how to say it, but the word actually means to separate. So even as the disciples were going one way and he sent, like Jesus goes one way and he sends the disciples a different way, it's the exact same word. There she goes. Bye. She didn't like my Greek. I'm so sorry. But as they separated, it was this idea that you're removing. And so Lisa, to that point, like you're removing the anger, you're removing the hostility. It's not that the situation doesn't happen. It's that we're separating it. And so just from the Greek perspective, absolutely. And that is hard because we like to hold things against people. Yay.
And I think a lot of times people say like forgive and forget. And really it's forgive. And I would say learn. Because we can't forget that. And that's not healthy either. We have to learn from our experiences. To forget something, I don't think that's healthy either.
Yep. So. Right. Biblically, only God can do that. He can completely, which is a bizarre, crazy thing, but how cool too.
Yep.
Excellent.
And I think it takes the burden off of us when we feel like I have to forgive and forget. It really isn't that. We just need to forgive. Sorry.
I do think like when God does the forgive and forget, it's in a very healthy way and it's keeps us in mind. But I think for us, if we were to do that, just festers probably, and we'll probably get into that, but the forgetting part is super unhealthy.
It's true. Very true. Welcome back, Sonia. We're gonna deal with technology today.
I know. I am so sorry.
It's totally fine.
It adds to the forgiveness piece. It is.
I mean, you guys are being very, very forgiving of me.
I'm no longer holding my anger against you. Good. Okay.
Right, good.
Our next question for us. Let me make sure they're on. There we go. What if they're not willing to change? The people that we're working on forgiving, what if they're not willing to change? Shall we go backwards this time? Lisa, go for it.
Yeah, I think that's a hard one for me because I will hold on to unforgiveness to teach someone a lesson or to punish them. And oftentimes what I'm finding is that I'm hurting myself more than I'm actually punishing someone else. By holding on to that, it becomes this weight for me. And so I'm working through that. Even if people aren't asking for forgiveness, especially if they don't think they've done anything wrong, that I still need to find a way to forgive them so that I'm not hurting myself in the process.
It's good. Well, it's not good, but that's a good concept. Yep.
No, and I wouldn't say that it's easy either. And it really is one of those things where I'm still trying to figure out, does that mean that I have to go to them and actually say, hey, I forgive you, even if they don't think they've done anything? It's a very weird balance of what that looks like.
Absolutely. Sonia, you want to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the thing about forgiveness is that it's often more about ourselves than it is about the other person. So whether or not they choose to change, that freedom that happens in the process of forgiveness gives us the freedom. It takes the weight off of the feelings and the emotions and the things that we've been going through more than setting that other person free in a sense. And I think that that's why we want to see that change and we want them to feel the remorse for what they've done. But really, it's more about what happens internally with us. So whether or not a person has that change or not, if we're able to truly forgive, it changes our perspective and our hearts, which is actually the goal.
It's good. Oof. Forgiveness is suddenly way more complicated than just move on. All right, V, go for it.
Yeah, I think I agree with what everyone's already said. I think that there needs to be like a healthy balance of grace and truth in it. And so I think there's a lot of like persistent grace in like a relationship, and continuing to know that someone can change, or someone like that you should forgive in your own heart, so that it's, you can move on in a healthier way. But I think at the same time, there needs to be some truth there for whatever that means in your situation. Like, does that just need to be a person that isn't as involved in your lifestyle, or is that just someone that needs like a different relationship from you, or whatever that truth is? I think there still needs to be something that is both healthy for you and that you forgave them, but also that what role does that person play in your life now that they haven't changed, right? And so I think that's like a hard thing that I've had to deal with too.
Yeah, well, and that gets way more complicated when we think about, okay, if I forgive, what happens next? How do we move forward? Like, do we move forward? Yeah, we'll get to that too. Man, anyone want to add anything before we jump into our next question? All good. Are you ready? It only gets more complicated from here, right?
Yeah.
This one is hard for me, so I'm excited to hear what you guys have to say. If I don't care about the relationship continuing, why do I need to forgive them? Like, if I just am done and this is it, why can't I, why do I need to forgive them? So Sonia, let's start with you because you're here. So.
Yes, right. Let's take advantage of that for sure. I think it goes back to just that same thing, is that I think that forgiveness and what we hold into in our heart will only be a grounds for either growth or bitterness. And so regardless of whether or not you're going to have a relationship with someone in the future, if you are not able to forgive, it's actually the conditions of your own heart which do not get to change. So you can either choose that you're going to forgive and you're going to have like the opportunity to have that soft and pliable heart that God wants of us, or you're going to become, I think, just bitter and hard-hearted towards people because you're not going to be able to release that. So I just think it's more about the condition of our own heart rather than the other person.
That's good. For sure. Lisa, do you want to jump in on that?
Yeah, this is something that I definitely wrestle with. It's a joke in our family, but we say, if you wronged us, you're just dead to us. And we don't mean it, but in a sense, it's this right here. Why should I invest in that? Why should I continue to think about it, move forward with it, if I really don't care about that relationship anymore, just from how I'm feeling or how hurt I am? But at the same time, just like Sonia was saying, when we are the ones holding on to unforgiveness, we are the ones who are suffering, not someone else. And so whether or not we care about that relationship anymore, we do care about our relationship with God, and the bitterness in our hearts is directly reflected in that relationship with God. So, I mean, as hard as it is, it really is, like Sonia said, for you more than for that other person.
Yeah. It's the tricky thing about forgiveness. It's more about us. B, go for it.
Yeah, all of this is like making me think like how much it's kind of scary, because it's making me think about how much growth wouldn't happen if we had the luxury just to not forget, like just to forget things. And so if someone passed away or whatever happened, or went, was just out of your life, and we just didn't have to like forgive for that anymore, it would just be so weird. Nothing else would happen out of that. And so just kind of scary to think about if we had that like God-given like ability to just forget things and not see these flaws. That would be crazy. It would just be weird to see what would happen. But I just think unforgiveness festers in someone who's unwilling to forgive, not the person who needs to be forgiven, which is so crazy to me. But yeah, it's really.
Well, I would say I'm going to jump with some thoughts too, because I'm here, might as well. There's a relationship in my life that used to be a relationship that's not going to be anymore. Someone I used to work with in a past setting, not here. Let me just clarify. I love everyone here. unlike Lisa's words, no one's dead to me here, right? Like, but in my past, there's someone that wounded me and left me kind of in shambles. And then when I came here, because I had not released him, I was unable to build certain relationships here. And so while I'm never going to have a relationship with this person because of who he was to me and what he meant to me at the time, it's hindered those kinds of relationships in the present. And so almost releasing him frees me to have relationships now. And so I can't say I'm great at this, considering I'm still working through it and it's been 2 years, but it's, for me, without releasing what was, I am not open to what it can be in the future. And so that's my only thought. Any other thoughts before we move to our next one?
Can I just ask you a question? Did you contact him about it, or is it something that you're working through in your heart?
I don't think I'm allowed to say this on YouTube, but Lisa, I hate you. Because that's what I've been wrestling with is I thought I had let him go. I thought I had moved forward, and all of a sudden a bunch of it came up again. And so how do I deal with that? And I'm wondering if I need to, and not to have dialogue. I don't want dialogue. I don't think that would be good for me, but to just say to him, I release you and I'm moving forward. I'm wondering if I need to do that. So in answer to your question, I haven't, which might be why I'm stuck.
But I think that's so good, Kelsey, to recognize that. I love what you said. I don't need dialogue. It's not a conversation. It's not up for let's repair this relationship. It's just I need to do this so that I can release myself from this burden.
Yep.
Do you think that needs to happen? Do you think that's something that should happen in every situation like that, or is that something that somebody can just forgive on their own with like the community around them, counselor, whatever?
Yeah. I don't know what you guys think, but I don't know that it's in every, like, I don't think this is a recipe where we can say this is how it is every single time. Yeah. I think it is moment by moment, relationship by relationship.
Yep. For sure.
I'd agree with that. Unfortunately, this feels like one that I have to say something. So I'd love to just move on. Tried it.
Next question.
So we're going to move on now.
Therapy, that's like free therapy for you.
Right. I was here to host, not to work through my deep-seated issues. Thanks, guys.
You're welcome.
Actually, the next question goes with it. And so we may have already answered it, but I'm going to drop it in anyway. Why can't we just move on? Time heals, right? And I have heard these things come out of my mouth. I'm guessing most of us have heard these things come out of our mouth. So why can't we just move on? And I think we've already touched on it, but does anyone have any extra thoughts? I won't even call, just if anyone has thoughts, go for it.
Well, I just think like so often you think if you haven't dealt with something, you think you can just move over it. And then all of a sudden, years later, you could have a whole different situation pop up and you're going to be surprised by something that you haven't dealt with. So I just think like you have to continue to keep dealing with things in the moment and at the time, because it will come back at some point, I think, if you haven't dealt with it.
Students,
I think what's that?
Go for it.
No, I just think we used like a kind of just like the imagery of like the Tupperware in the back of the fridge, overs that just stay back there, and then you just think that it's fine to keep and just let time take its place. But I think of time as that a lot, where things are just rotting, which I thought that was a cool metaphor.
That's super good.
Yeah.
I'd forgotten about that.
Yeah, I think that was really good.
For those of you in the chat, this will be something we will offer to you later, but that was from our series, My Bad. One of the speakers, Brandon Hall, shared this illustration of we treat our relationships like Tupperware, and when bad things happen, we just leave it and pretend it's not there. But ultimately, you open it back up and it smells and it's not good, and it's beginning to impact the containers next to it. So there's the illustration for those of us. I'll share that information for you later. Aaron Johnson says, I think for me to have a healthy heart and soul, I have to forgive them. I don't feel like I need to tell them, but to pray about it and think about the lesson learned. It's good. Thank you, Aaron. That's very good. It is more about us moving. Students use the word, and I don't know that they use the word correctly all the time, but they're triggers, right? So we get into a new relationship and it triggers something that used to be. That's tough.
I know for me, I had a relationship that I really thought I had moved past. I thought forgiveness had been offered, but I noticed it creeping into my marriage. Some of those things that were hurtful for me in that previous relationship were hurting me and my husband. And so to go back and kind of recognize where is this? Where is it coming from? And why is it infiltrating this now? It's because I hadn't dealt with it. I hadn't offered the forgiveness that I needed to, and I hadn't released myself from that.
Yeah.
So even years later, when you think you're done with it, like Sonia was saying, like it comes back.
And part of that is too because we are sinful beings. Like we're still trying to model forgiveness after what Jesus has taught us and his example of us doing that. But I think that's why we have to just be hyper aware and alert. And the minute that those thoughts and feelings come back up, that we're able to like test them against the truth and test them against what we know is right and say, no, that's not right. We don't have to own that feeling or that emotion. Because we still have a sinful heart, and as much as even we think we've had our best intentions of forgiving someone, there's going to be times where in a hard moment we're going to revert back to some of those feelings.
This is fun, Kelsey.
We picked a tough one. Lisa, you jumped in on a tough one too. Congratulations.
Share emojis again, or
Yeah, right?
I no longer, now I just like the crying face. It's good. I have some other questions. I know those are the ones we prepped for or thought about ahead of time, but I'm going to give us, because this is good. I'm like all in, so you're welcome.
It's like lightning round now.
Speed round. One is, we're just going to ask it. I'm not going to try and preface it. What about an eye for an eye? What about justice? And this hits a little bit hard right now in our modern culture, because let's be real, we're facing injustice in our world. So what do we do about that while also being a group of people that lives in forgiveness? So what about an eye for an eye, and what about justice?
yikes. I think like Jesus flipped this on its head, which is super hard, and he's basically saying it's the same reason like firemen don't show up to a scene with fire. And so I think there's a lot of it's hard because you wish that if everyone was on the same page, then things would happen cohesively and people wouldn't go eye for an eye. I think if people could all find like a common ground in what brings healing, that would be ideal, right? But I think there's, again, going back to what I said earlier, I think there's like a healthy balance between grace and truth there. I think there's a lot of stuff that you shouldn't hold back when it comes to justice, and but I also think there should be a lot of grace in that. So it's really hard. I think the eye for an eye is something that just happens naturally all the time, just because you want, like I said, you want to have that control.
Well, and another thing Jesus says is before you're messing with someone else, like check your own eye. Check your heart before you're working on someone else. And so one of the things that stuck with me was, I think my oldest was about 3 or 4, which would make the younger one 1 or 2. And she did something in retribution to the little one. And I said, why did you do that? And she said, well, you know what? Golden rule is what she told me. Treat others as you want them to treat you. And she's like, obviously, Catherine wanted me to hit her because she hit me first. And it was this, like, she had twisted it just enough to where it made sense to justify her actions instead of understanding really that it has to start somewhere. And for us, we get to choose that it starts with us.
It's interesting as you're saying that, because it brings up the conversation of like Is it that you want justice, or do you want like revenge? Do you want a person to truly be held accountable and be, you know, something to be made right? Or are you wanting to see them maybe suffer in the way that you have suffered, or in the way that someone else has suffered? And I think that that's always the hard part of trying to really define what justice means and how Jesus dealt with justice. Like, kind of like V said, I mean, Jesus turned everything upside down in the ways of, this for that, or if you do this, then that. And I think that his example, like, was to show us that, like, true justice and caring for people with love and mercy is not ever about revenge.
That's good. I think something super like tangible, and I hope I can say this, but I think something super tangible in this moment that reflects this is like the difference between like a peaceful protest and a riot. And I think you can understand the truth that happens in those protests, but then you also need to have some grace for the riots, because of someone's obviously hurt for what they're doing. And so I think I can explain it as, someone just needing to communicate in a certain way. And so I think eye for an eye doesn't, some people take it this way, some people want to respond this way, but I think I think it's super hard because of people's perspective on what's been inflicted on them, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Like what Sonia said, for sure.
It's tough.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting, even I'm going to do the biblical thing, whatever, I'm that person. Even biblically, like you read through Romans and Paul's like, hey, honor the government, honor people, don't take revenge. Revenge is the Lord's. And then you get into Revelation and they're like, go and protest, go and stand up against, because what the world looked like in both eras, like it wasn't the same. And so understanding there is room for speaking up, for justice, for standing up for the people that can't stand up for themselves, for taking care of people. But that's not me personally attacking other people. That's me understanding my responsibility as a Christ follower to help and serve and love people. But it's different. The motivation, like you guys said, the motivation is different. And that's tough.
Well, and one of my favorite Bible passages always is Micah 6:8, act justly, love mercy, and walk humbly with God. Like, do those things.
Yep.
I think the walk humbly is like the biggest part about this whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mostly because of the forgiveness comes out of that. And I think that's the hardest part for me, is to like come down and notice that, in 10 minutes I'll mess up as a human, and know that I have no right to be unforgiving towards someone else for something, so I think it's coming down to earth a little bit. And that resonates with me a bunch in this conversation.
Yeah.
Our jobs are justice and mercy. How we do it is humility. That's
super good.
Okay, you ready for it? If you guys have questions, by all means, both in this room, but also in the chat, if you guys have questions or comments as well, by all means. Cassie did say it's definitely hard when it comes to an eye for an eye, especially with forgiving someone who hurt her family deeply. When someone messes with our families, the good side of us doesn't come out, not instantly, usually. But I do have one more question for us on my end, and then if anyone else has more, we'll throw those in. And this wasn't even in the potential questions, so I apologize, kind of. But how do we forgive ourselves when we don't feel like we're allowed to be forgiven? I think you guys even touched on it. Forgiveness starts with ourselves. So how do we forgive ourselves when we don't feel like we're even allowed?
So I don't know, Sonia, if you remember this, several years ago, I was talking about something that I had done, and it was just this barrier. I was just having a really hard time moving past it. And I knew that God had forgiven me, but I couldn't forgive myself. And she said, what would be different if you could go back and not do that? Because you wouldn't be who you are today. You wouldn't have the experiences that you have. You wouldn't have learned the lessons that you learned. So like, what would you gain from that, and what are you gaining from not forgiving yourself? And it was a monumental moment for me where I realized, if God can forgive me for this, if my friends can forgive me for this, why can't I forgive myself? Because I was still, and it just feels like this weight, this burden that you carry around when you're unforgiving, even to yourself. And the freedom that comes on the other side of that was, I mean, it was really life-changing. I know that sounds dramatic, but it really was to be able to say, that was me then, and this is me now, and I am who I am because of that.
That's good.
I think that, sometimes when we're not able to forgive ourselves, there's also a little bit of a thing there in our ability to release control. Because there's still a part of us that wants to know how the outcome of whatever situation is going to be. And if I forgive myself or I forgive another person, what's the outcome going to be? And I think that there is something in that surrender and trust that we can continue to, if we do the work of forgiveness for ourselves or for another person, that we can trust God with the outcome of whatever it is that's to come. So whether that's for ourselves or for another person, I think that there's something in that, at least in my own life, that I've had to learn how to deal with, of releasing control, and that is tied to forgiveness and really just trusting. Yeah.
I think control is a big piece of it. That's kind of my first answer. I think another thing would be just having hope in knowing that things can change. I think you can drown a little bit in cynicism and bitterness, and I think that can show a lot in the way you forgive others. But I think if you're willing to forgive yourself and see that forgiveness come from God, you can do it for others. So I think the hardest thing for me is this question. So I'm super hard on myself. I'm always critiquing everything I do, always thinking I have things to work on. But I think just to be candid, I think and transparent, I think the only way I would ever forgive myself is knowing that Jesus forgives me. And that's why the control thing is so huge. Like you have that control, you surrender that, and know that there's hope for change, and it's not in your hands. But that's my biggest struggle for sure.
I think that too, to think about, I have been doing a summer garden, and I love to do that anyways, but there's something that to me almost feels just almost spiritual about it, when is this really, really hard, what seems to be, rocky dirt. And you think about like forgiveness, and if you are not in a place of that, and your heart can get hard, and yet the littlest, tiniest bit of hope, the littlest bit of new growth can come through that hard dirt. And it's just amazing as you start to watch that happen. And now here it's been like a few more weeks, and then you start to water that and grow those new growth things that are happening. And now it's the new growth that has taken over that hard and rocky soil. And I think like so many times, even with ourselves, we think like, you know what, it's just too hard. Like there's no way that something new can spring from this. There's no way that like something good can come from this thing that happened. And I think like that's the beauty of the hope of Jesus, that the tiniest seed, the tiniest thing in life can spring through that hard soil, and it can transform into this huge, beautiful thing. And you hardly, not that hard soil isn't still there maybe at some points, but it can be covered with this new growth. And so that's just been like, summer gardening is always my favorite analogy with all of that stuff. But I do just think it's amazing that just a little bit of hope can spring forth through something that's so hard. And, yeah.
That's a great analogy.
My farming usually ends with the death of a plant, so I don't think the illustration holds as well in my household. It's good. We kill cacti in our house. It's fine.
Oh no.
Oh God.
I keep my dogs alive. That's enough.
There you go.
No, but that's one. So I'm in the student realm a lot, right? And this comes up a lot with students. Not that it doesn't with adults, but I think there's a willingness in students to talk about it and go, yeah, I just haven't let myself off the hook. Whereas adults, we just move on and pretend it's not there until it comes back and we realize our hearts have hardened. But what always comes to the surface is I don't know how to let go.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and to be honest, I don't know that I have a great answer. I think you hit it probably closest is how do we recognize that God has and trust that even when we can't? And I don't know that the feelings are always good, but the outcome can be. And so it's tough. It's tough. Excellent. Any other thoughts or questions that you guys have?
I don't think so.
My encouragement, one of the questions, we kind of touched on it, that we had pondered is, what if they're not around? If you have people in your life, and I'm just going to drop this in there if you guys have more thoughts, but if you have people in your life that are no longer around, that you need to work through forgiveness, we know that you don't have to say that I forgive you to the person. Sometimes we can't, but it's also not something you should walk alone. So seek a counselor. They have this really cool thing called empty chair where they will make you talk to the person even though they're not there, and you'll feel crazy for a moment, but it allows you to work through a lot of the things and can be absolutely revolutionary. But truly, wherever you guys are at, seek help. Forgiveness is not an easy conversation. In fact, it's an easy conversation. It's a difficult concept.
Mm-hmm.
So by all means, any last thoughts from you guys?
I've heard people write letters and then like either put them in a balloon and let them go, or do something with them. But just kind of getting those thoughts out of your mind, out of your heart, into something or onto something can be
good.
Really good.
You know, I have kids, and we talk about this a lot, that practice makes you better at things. And the more that you can practice forgiveness in the little things, then you're going to it's not going to be the first time that you're having to deal with this as bigger things come up. And I know in my own life, like, again, admitting I'm wrong, saying I'm sorry, letting those things flow out of my mouth in a very intentional, more regular way makes it be a lot less hard to recognize and to kind of use that forgiveness tool in my life that maybe if I hadn't practiced is going to be a lot harder to go back to. So I just think like just that muscle memory of practicing in the little things that maybe you think like, I didn't probably really need to say sorry for that, or I didn't need to maybe actually like go to somebody about that. But the more I think that we take steps to make reconciliation and forgiveness real in our lives in the small ways, it will carry over into the big things as well.
Good. Libby just wrote as well. I know some of the students recently did this. You can write on a plate and smash the plate. I would recommend not expensive plates if you're going to go about doing this, but that's good.
And do it like in a bag so that it doesn't just go everywhere.
Or be prepared for tough cleanup.
It's the mom thing you just said.
It's good. I'm going to leave everyone with a couple questions, and then we're going to say farewell and give you some next steps. But really, for all of us, and this is just a ponder, please don't write it in the chat right now, but who do you need to forgive, and who do you need to apologize to? Those are tough questions, and the truth is, we probably have names to both sides, and we may not want to admit it, but it's probably a good practice. In Sonia's words, practice makes us better at things. So creating that culture in your home, making it a regular thing. Parents, apologize to your kids when you make mistakes. Like, these are good practices, but who is it that you need to forgive, and who do you need to apologize to? Thank you guys so much for joining me. I'm going to say farewell to you. Everyone say bye, so that I can show you guys some other things. But thank you to those three very wise souls. I now know why Sonia's internet had to be weird for a moment. It's so that we could get Lisa in this chat. So Good job, team. But just want to let you know of a couple things that might be helpful to you, just as some next steps. One is to check out My Bad at eHills. I mentioned it earlier. I'll put the link in the chat as well. But if you go to ehills.org, you can go to messages and look at some past series, or I just put the link in the chat, and it is an amazing series about releasing, about moving forward, about processing through some pain. So please, by all means, if you haven't watched it, go watch it. Even if you have watched it, some things that came up in there were just so good for the heart. So maybe go catch some of those if this is something you're kind of working through. The second thing is on July 19th, we are going to have our next why conversation. So in 3 weeks, and we're going to touch on the question, why should I change? Why should I change? And so for a lot of us, we're in a season where we've been faced with some things that we're like, oh, maybe I need to do some work on me. But why should I change if my world is happy, if nothing else is bad, if it's not my problem? Why should I change? These are tough questions. So invite some people, join us. Otherwise, thank you guys so much for being here. It has been fun. It has been an amazing conversation. So thank you guys so much for joining us today. We will see you on July 19th.